there's so much pressure there. Like I was under so much pressure financially and professionally. I'm sure we did like something stupid, like 40 grand's worth of merch in a weekend.
Yeah, it went insane. So that essentially set us up for the first time ever. We had like actual money in the bank. It's a huge chunk of it, and it's the most consistent part as well. We went from thinking, oh, we're really comfortable here, to all of a sudden there's a massive hole there, and now we need to start paying for somewhere.
So I kind of conceived this idea that, well, what we need to do is we need to make it feel bigger. I can't think of anything else I'd rather be doing.
This is the Leeds Business Podcast, and I'm your host, Phil Fraser. For many, turning a hobby that they love into a paying business is the ultimate business dream. This week, I speak to Dan Moylan and Michael Normanton of The Square Ball, who've made that dream come true. Listen how they describe how personal financial problems demanded that it became a paying success, the multiple revenue streams that power the business, the growth pains of growing the business, and of course, the madness that is Leeds United. The business surgery answers the following question. I'm thinking of starting a podcast. What are the key points to consider? Before we start, I have one simple request. Please hit the follow or subscribe button on the app that you're listening on. That's it. Thank you. Okay, so let's get into an episode that, as a Leeds United fan and fellow podcaster, I was fascinated to do.
On today's Leeds Business Podcast, I have with me Dan and Michael from The Square Ball. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on. Now, before we start, I have my sponsorship read to do, which isn't as good as the one you do on your podcast, but bear with me on this one. Today's podcast is brought to you in association with Leeds-based YFM Equity Partners. YFM Equity Partners offer investments from £2 to £50 million, specifically to fast-growing businesses, as well as providing the resources and expertise needed to take your business to the next level. So if you're an entrepreneur with a vision for growth, whether you're expanding your market or scaling operations, YFM Equity Partners can help you turn your ambitions for your business into reality. And if you want to hear what YFM are really about and what they're like to deal with, listen to our recent episode with Adam Oldfield of Force 24 and episode 23 with Zandra Moore from Pan Intelligence. Both of them talk very positively about YFM and their experience with dealing with them. So if you're looking to partner with a team that believe in your potential, you can find out more at yfmep.com. That address is also at the top of the show notes. And when you do contact YFM, make sure you tell them Phil from Leeds Business Podcast sent you. So, Dan, Michael, in one sentence, what is The Square Ball?
It's a, what would you say? Fanzine and podcast and merch operation based out of Leeds. That's all tied to Leeds United.
Exactly. Started as a magazine, is now more of a podcast, probably fair to say.
The reason I wanted you guys on is not only because I listen to the pod and read the mag and buy the merch, is you guys are the classic story of turning a hobby into a business. So, Dan, first, how did you get into it and what were you doing beforehand?
So background is post-university, graduated in 1999, ended up as a nightclub and bar DJ, which turned into doing a bit of local radio. I worked for Radio Air doing the weekends in Leeds. Sadly, no longer with us as a radio station. That's progress. And that sort of led into a drive time show in Newcastle with a sister station in the same group called Metro Radio. Got made redundant from them. Just again, it was all in the name of progress when everything got networked. So in a sentence, the Ofcom, the government oversight, reduced the amount of local hours that had to come from the area to which you were broadcasting. In that case, it was sort of Newcastle and Sunderland, and Teesside was in there as well. Reduced those local requirements. As soon as they reduce the local requirements, what does a big company do? Well, it cuts jobs to make it more efficient and improve the product. I don't know. So I kind of got 18 months notice of my redundancy. As soon as the Ofcom regulations got changed, I was aware that at some point before too long, the job was going to go. So it got to, when was it? It was September 2019. I got made redundant. And we decided then, we sat in a pub, the gang of us, and just said, can we make a go of this? Otherwise I'm going to have to go get a real job. It was about the size of it. And my redundancy ran out at the turn of the year. So it was the turn of the year heading into 2020. And I was the first one to take a salary out of this whole operation. And it was just kind of a now or never moment. And I mean, thankfully it worked. But then of course the pandemic came, didn't it, within 3 months. And I mean, you can pick up the story there because the timing for you is just impeccable.
I think probably the story should start a bit earlier, actually, because we actually started this whole thing back in the promotion from League One season, so 2009-10. From my point of view, I'd lived down in Oxford for a year with an ex-girlfriend, worked in the development office at University College there for a year, come back up to Leeds, needed a job via like an email forwarded from my sister's mate, ended up at ITV, only did 6 months, met a Peruvian, went travelling for 6 months. I'll brush over that bit of the story. Ended up back at ITV doing maternity cover by 2008, so I was back there. And then a couple of years on, the magazine had been going since 1989, but it had stopped sometime, not entirely sure when, 2006, 2007.
I mean, it was just a fanzine. It's worth saying that. It properly classic fanzine era. It was born in 1989, wasn't it? So it's proper like stapled together and photocopied job. And we ended up professionalizing it, but it was going to die, wasn't it? So
yeah, well, the people who had been making it had stopped, but there was still a forum that had existed forever, really, in the background. So there was a bit of a discussion on there of it's a shame to let it die. So I don't quite know how, but us two ended up volunteering to get it going again. So the first home game of the 2009-10 season, turned up on the Lowfield with this 32-page, sort of all right looking magazine, but it was pretty rough at that stage. And so that's how we kind of became the company we are today. It was kind of the fresh start for Square Ball.
Yeah, and so my radio stuff started at Radio Air. It was after Radio Air lost the commentary rights to Leeds United when Ken Bates came in. So I was slightly put out by that. But I started getting into the radio. It was about 2000 and I'm going to say 6-7-ish, something like that. Started doing some bits there alongside DJing in the nightclubs. And then it was 2008, I got the Saturday afternoon shift on Radio Air because I could talk about football. But what that did give us was access to a broadcast standard studio. So I just said to you lads, like, I'd listen to like the Guardian's Football Weekly, and I was like, I really like this. Why can't we do a Leeds version? Should we try doing that? So we had 24-hour access to it. So we just used to go let ourselves in with the key fob and just go use the spare off-air studio. So that started in 2010, didn't it? So it was summer 2009 when we picked up the mag. I thought, these podcast things are quite cool. Look at what they've done. So let's just avail ourselves of this. And because I wasn't making any progress really in the radio, I was kicking my heels a little bit. And on a personal level, I thought, well, maybe if I go make this podcast, it's a way of showcasing my talents and it might lead to something. And actually, it led to the radio, but then back from the radio into this. And this has actually been a far bigger thing than probably that was in the end. So that's the timeline of it, isn't it? So 2009 was the mag. Start of 2010 was the podcast. And it sort of ebbed and flowed over the years, didn't it? But it was 2019 when we went, right, it's now or never.
Yeah, there were some years in the middle where, I mean, in the Cellino era, there were such big gaps between podcasts. We actually fully missed some manager. I think we pretty much missed Uwe Rosler being Leeds manager because he was only there for something like 7 weeks. We're like, well, he came, we drew some games, he got sacked. Well,
yeah, because the owner was mad. We should probably say for the benefit of anybody who's not a Leeds fan. Yeah.
But that was, I mean, Dan had got a job up in Newcastle by this point. I'd had twins, so just life had got in the way of doing it to a large extent at this point. But then, it reaches a point where you're getting made redundant. I'm really sick of my job. Bielsa's have just arrived at Leeds. The
Bielsa thing had started the year before, so Bielsa started 2018, and that was when we started. That's when we went properly weekly again. Yeah, and then just it snowballed from there. But it was 2019 when we actually went full time. Oh, I did first anyway. Yeah,
but from when we started doing it more consistently again was kind of around the Bielsa era, I suppose. It had been ticking over, but it had got very inconsistent. But I mean, in the very early days of doing it, you were still doing drive time on the radio in Newcastle. So you were driving back down, and we were sat in Radio Air till like one in the morning some days, just to try and get a thing done. Yeah. So it was kind of tough in the.
Yeah, I was finishing my show at 7 in Newcastle, driving down straight to Radio Air, arriving at like 9 o'clock or whatever, just before 9 o'clock, and then we were sitting and doing like 2 shows actually at that point, weren't we? Because it went from the weekly show to then we started as like a subscription offering, trying to build a subscription base. But again, which proved really, really useful in the end because it's still going strong now. But that was really, really hard. And again, at that point.
So between sort of that and sort of doing it seriously, it was just a hobby. Was it making any money at all? Was it pocket money? I mean,
no. I mean, in the early days of the podcast, it was still the days when the majority of podcasts, I think at the time I might have had like a a Nokia N95 or something, which was, I think you could get podcasts on it, but it was one of a lot of phones weren't. It was kind of just on the cusp of iPhone, wasn't it? I think that a few people had iPhones at that point, but for the majority of people, a podcast was plugging in an iPod and syncing it with iTunes, and it was a very different. It was a very different ecosystem.
First iPhone was 2007, wasn't it? And we started in 2010, so it was just on the upswing.
Right.
And so if I could credit myself with anything, it's having a bit of foresight of thinking that might be a thing. But it was completely luck. I really like what they do with the Football Weekly, and I know how obsessive Leeds fans are about talking about Leeds because it's all I do. So why can't we do that? It feels like a fun thing to do. And we can use it to sell some more magazines.
And there was no obvious route to making money from it at that stage either, because, for example, companies like Acast exist now where they sell the adverts for you. You just take revenue out of it. They sell sponsorships. You can take revenue. And it's now an understood thing that there are adverts in podcasts. At the time, I don't think The Guardian monetized theirs at all either, did they? It was just, in some ways, those days were better because there were no adverts on podcasts. It was quite nice. But it was equally, no one was making any money out of it. So we saw it as a route of, well, if people can learn about the magazine from this, they might buy the magazine because they like the podcast. The way it's flipped over time is actually the magazine sales are consistent and they're fine, but the podcast is the bit that now makes money, and the magazine is. If it was just a magazine, it wouldn't be a sustainable business.
Well, print is a dying industry. Yeah, there's no two ways about it. I mean, look at the local papers, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at what they've become.
So the podcast was launched off the back of an idea. You've listened to other podcasts. It's quite interesting, and it might promote sales of the magazine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but both of them were just hobbies.
Yeah. Completely. Yeah, there was never any intention to make it a serious business until possibly. I just wanted to be on board with the whole Bielsa thing. I was like, something special's happening here. We need to document this. Mm-hmm. That's when we picked it back up again in 2018. But then it was necessity is the mother of invention and all that. It was just about, well, I'm getting made redundant, and it's get a real job or give this a go, see if we can make this a thing. And I just had faith that we could. I thought there was always something there, because again, being a Leeds fan, I know how obsessive I am about Leeds United. I thought, well, surely we can make something that people relate to.
And without going over Leeds United, which we could do for hours and hours and hours. From a business point of view, there was no business plan, no strategy.
Oh God, no.
It was just see if we can make some money and see what happens.
Well, certainly in the early days, my thought was always there isn't money in this, but it's not something we can make enough money out of to turn it into a job. Because when it was just a magazine and I was doing that, people at ITV knew I was doing it. I was doing a fair bit of on ITV's time, truth be told. Over the years, at one point I had like a full store cupboard. I was like, just put all the magazines in there, and there's some T-shirts in it and stuff. My boss was a Leeds fan; he was fine with it. But people were like, "Oh, would you like to do it full time?" And I obviously used to say yes, but there's not the money for a single person's salary, so it won't ever happen. Was kind of my answer for years. But then, as time went on, and you saw podcasts becoming a much bigger thing, and you saw, I don't know who would have been the first people to do it, but we saw an Arsenal one called Arseblog, and they had a Patreon service, and you could see at the time that you could see how many people they had subscribing to it, and it was a few thousand, and we were like,
it was like 5,000, wasn't it?
And we were like, that'd work. Like that is a full-time job now for some people. So I think that maybe made us think, oh well, maybe if we can be more consistent with this, and we can just put out stuff, and because the thing is, well, doing it around a normal job and family, like it's a hell of a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it's fine until life gets in the way. Like you can say, oh, we're going to do this consistently, but then the kids are ill, and you end up changing your shift in Newcastle because you're doing breakfast or something, and it just all falls apart pretty quickly. You've got to have a fair period of just really, really ploughing on regardless with it during the early stages.
And then getting made redundant actually gave me the time back to do it.
Yeah.
Stupidly enough.
I think often people talk about that inflection point from giving up a proper job to doing their startup or a new job or a new idea that's got no money. Often the case is they're pushed over the edge to go shit or bust. I've got to go for it. And obviously you're in that situation, but your situation, Michael, was different because you proactively
Yeah.
said, "I'm giving up a proper job to go to this thing." How did that feel? How did Mrs. Normanton feel?
I was going to say, can I just say, I'm laughing, by the way, in the background, because I know how hard Michael tried to get himself made redundant. They just would not bite him, were they?
They weren't. Yeah, there were redundancies every few years, but there'd sort of been one about 6 months before, and I was like, I've missed out again. I suppose I'm gonna have to just quit. But I mean, I was fortunate, really, insofar as if you let anyone listen to the podcast, my kind of thriftiness and I'm economical with my money. That is kind of a recurring feature. But I was lucky insofar as I didn't have like a massive mortgage or anything. My wife has a pretty good job, so I did speak to her. She knew I was very unhappy in my job, and I was like, look, I'm gonna try and do this. I did also promise I'd do some other work too, which thankfully COVID put an end to that. So I could then just focus on square ball. But yeah, she was kind of all right with it, and we made a decision that it'll be fine for a bit. I basically said, give me a year of this, see how it goes, because the moment of walking out of a proper job and going, I'm now a full-time podcaster, how good's this? But then you get like 500 quid at the end of the month and you go, oh, that bit's not quite as good all of a sudden.
And I think there's two sides to that. One is the, oh shit, I'm giving up a proper job and a salary and I'll end up with no money at the end of the month. But the other side of it, and with a lot of the jobs that we're all doing, it's not brain surgery. Nobody's going to die if you get it wrong. You'll probably end up getting another job anyway. So it's, although it is scary, and like you said, you've probably had a year's support to do it. And that's what I always talk to people about is actually go for it, because you probably won't get another job. You could get another job selling advertising space or something else like that. So it's not as scary as it feels, but it looks really, really scary. So again, from timeline, Dan, you've been made redundant. You've quit your job. Where do the other members of the team sort of come in from a full-time point of view, and who made that decision to bring them in? Because obviously there's only a limited pot initially.
Well, it was in the business, there was Daniel Chapman, who Moscow, if anyone listens to the podcast, he was already a self-employed writer, wasn't he, by this stage? So he was kind of already sort of full-time on it, but he was doing his own Patreon thing that had spun off from a previous job he'd had. So he kind of started rolling that into more of what we were doing at Square Ball. It's funny enough you mentioned, actually, I had that conversation with him when he was, because I was talking about quitting to do this full time, and he was like, don't quit your job. I was like, I can get another job. It'll be fine. Like, if it doesn't work out, it's all right.
It's interesting hearing him say that, because when you said that, Phil, about, you can always just get another job, I had no skills. When I was made redundant, I was what?
Could have got my old job at ITV. It'd have been fine.
So I'd have been 41 when I got made redundant, and I'd spent 20 years DJing in nightclubs, and then I did the radio, and a lot of that's not transferable into anything. And there were financial pressures as well, because I'm the opposite to Michael in previous years, in that he's been very sensible with money. And as I was self-employed as a DJ, I started racking up debt. Then my work dropped, but we then had to keep servicing the debt. So I ended up in quite a lot of debt. So there was a financial pressure as well there. Like, if we don't do something now work-wise, and if I can't get I think I need at least, I worked out like 36 grand a year or something like that, just to sort of keep head above water properly, which is crazy. It's crazy. Ended up getting a debt management plan in the same conversation that we had about how we would make this work. And that took a lot of the financial pressure off. It dropped the outgoings by about, I think it's like 1,200 quid a month or something like that, which is, it's frightening when I think about it. And why I allowed it to persist for so long, I've no idea. No idea.
Caused me a lot of stress when you told me.
But he got more stressed than I did, because he's been so sensible across the years, and thankfully really taking care of it all now. And this has helped us do that. But there's so much pressure there. Like, I was under so much pressure financially and professionally, thinking, what can I actually do? Where am I going to get a job that pays enough money for me to service this debt? And it was proper panic station.
So you actually had a financial motivation to make this work.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, it was.
Do you think that affected your commitment to the role?
I mean, I ended up in therapy not long after that. Referred myself for therapy. Don't mind talking about it. We've spoken about it on the show. I think that was part of it. It was a combination of burnout from driving up and down to Newcastle for 5 years, not seeing my family, being on my own on the motorway all the time. huge financial pressure. Like when I was on the radio, I was doing an extra shift back at Radio Air in Leeds, just to pay for the petrol to drive up to Newcastle for the other 5 days a week. I was earning like 47 grand a year or something like that. It's wild.
Yeah.
I had nothing to show for it besides a lot of debt. So yeah, there was a huge pressure. I was not in a good place, but it was sink or swim. And yeah, I spent a lot of time actually just in fight or flight mechanism. And I think some of it's carried through actually. And the desperation and the necessity to make it work has actually motivated me and kept me motivated, and never to take my eye off the ball and never to slack. And it's still carried through now, even though things are fine now.
Yeah.
You know,
In terms of how we brought other people in though, we actually pretty much had a meeting where we said, well, what do we all need?
Yeah.
Because you were kind of the main breadwinner in your house. We were like, well, to begin with, you get paid more because you need it.
Yeah.
I can get by on this. Moscow, you're going to get by on this. Then we brought Paul in, who was, again, had always been part of it from the early days of the magazine.
He did what you did.
Yeah,
left the job.
But he stayed longer in his job. But it was it was almost reaching the point where, okay, how much does each person need here, and at what point can more people join? Was essentially how we did it. So like I can't remember how we structured it now, but I'm pretty sure you got paid like much more to begin with, but then we evened it up somehow.
Yeah,
probably. From me leaving my job and saying I'll do this and maybe do some media stuff as well. I did kind of actually get a job in working for a company in the Isle of Man doing some media buying stuff, and the flight over there to discuss the job was right at the start of COVID. It was like I think all the airports shut within about a week of me going over there. So the job I'd gone for kind of didn't happen because they were like, okay, we're going to have to put this on hold. You can still do some work, but it's going to be paid by the hour essentially now, rather than it being a part-time salaried job. And it just wasn't worth it. Like it was a lot of hassle for essentially no money really at the end of it. And at the same time, COVID's kicked in, schools are shut, 2 kids at home, my wife trying to do her job from home as well. So actually the timing of it was just like, look, I'm just going to look after the kids there, aren't I? There's no point. I'm trying to essentially do 3 jobs at once. I'm trying to do square ball stuff and this media job and look after 2 kids, and it's impossible. And actually, there's no point doing the media bit because I'm earning nothing from it. So that was really my way into just doing square ball full time. And then we come out the other side of COVID. Leeds are promoted. Things are going all right for us.
And Leeds getting promoted, it's probably worth mentioning.
And I'm free of a job.
Yeah, but how instrumental that was. And I think what we just did to answer like your question, Phil, was we just phased people in as soon as we could over time. When we knew there was enough security and enough money in the bank. Right, you come in. And actually, it just snowballed as well because you're buying people's time, aren't you? Rather than doing that and then this alongside it, you're just doing this. And then Leeds getting promoted, we had a load of merch ready to go. It's so funny, isn't it? Like we didn't even want to discuss the merch because we felt we're going to jinx it in that way that sports fans do. But we said, right, well, let's design some merch, but never acknowledge the fact that it exists. But we had it ready to go the weekend that Leeds got promoted, and the club didn't. The club didn't have anything ready to go, and they released some stuff after us. And I'm fairly sure we did like something stupid, like 40 grand's worth of merch in a weekend.
Yeah, it went insane.
And that was the absolute catalyst for everything.
Yeah, that and the summer special that we did, which was just a big celebration of if you're on the video, you can see the cover of it is behind you there.
It was a book of zine, wasn't it?
Yeah,
just celebrating.
It was about 100 pages, wasn't it? Big thick thing, but we sold like a huge number of those.
It was 10,000 we did.
So that essentially set us up for the first time ever. We had like actual money in the bank, and we were like, wow, okay, we can maybe do something. And at the same time as that as well, it's worth saying, massive credit as well to Steve at Calidus, who they've moved office now, but they did have an office by Ellen Road. And we at this point we were kind of between studios. We'd been recording stuff remotely over COVID, but coming out the other side of it, when you could start mixing again for work, we were like, we'll get a studio.
Well, they were still letting me use Radio Air up until the start of COVID because I still had my building pass. Like out of sympathy, they said, yeah, you can still carry on using it, but then they just locked it all down. So we did it all remotely for a bit, and we built up a lot of credit, I think, during that time as well, because people had nothing else to do. So we ended up doing like 3 shows a week at that point just to occupy ourselves. Yeah. And that built a lot of audience. Then when we came out of it, we're like, well, we need somewhere to record now. If we're going to do this, it needs to be done in person because it just makes it better. But we were able to then get the office at Calidus and then built the sort of studio room out of timber and fabric. You built that, didn't you? And then we reinvested the money that we got from all those earnings from promotion into like the microphones and the mic stands and cameras as well, wasn't it? We started getting cameras at that point. So like we'll just keep reinvesting what we get just to improve it and professionalize it. And it worked.
Let's just go back to COVID, because obviously you've quit. You're on the cusp of quitting. But
no, I was fully out. I was fully out by COVID.
But COVID must have played a big role in the growth of the podcast, because everyone's sitting at home.
Yeah.
Obviously, we can watch the games, but we can't go. What were the numbers like during COVID for the podcast? Did they sort of go up hugely, or how did that affect things?
I don't think they went up hugely, did they? We've generally seen across the time doing this just a very steady increase, haven't we?
Yeah.
I would say.
The only thing I could judge it by is the ad revenue from Acast, because I happened to look at that for the last 5 years.
Although the ad revenue during COVID was terrible,
because
everyone pulled the plug on advertising. I
was going to say, for want of a better phrase, the arse fell out of advertising, didn't it? Yeah, I remember speaking to somebody in radio saying it dropped by 90%, the ad rates.
Yeah.
So
because nobody could go out and buy anything.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just
everything disappeared. Like the job I'd kind of got in the Isle of Man, it was primarily buying advertising for a stairlift company. Was what it was going to be, and obviously, like,
such a glamorous life.
Going into old people's houses, not the best time for it. So that just stopped completely. But it was the same for everything. Like, yeah, every all retail, like sort of footfall stuff that you're aiming to drive, that all completely stopped. So yeah, the Acast revenue disappeared at that point, which was when it was fortunate actually that we had not been reliant on purely on ad revenue, because we had the kind of two income streams of subscribers too, and subscribers stayed, which we're very grateful for, because it meant we did have revenue coming in still during that period. Yeah,
it was enough to sustain everything, wasn't it? But then even being able to put out more shows a week, it built it into people's routines. I think because all you were allowed to do was do your mandatory 1 hour walk, wasn't it? So you take the dog out or whatever, listen to a podcast, and yeah, I think we just, in terms of a shared experience as well, it's not a tangible, but I just think we built a lot of emotional credit at that time as well.
Yeah.
So when we came out the other side of it with the promotion, this shared experience that we'd kind of been part of, and almost in the people that consumed it anyway, central to that experience. It felt like a really cool thing that was happening, albeit under really shit circumstances.
Yeah, I think because people missed out at that period as well, the experience of going to a game and talking to your mates, or even just hearing other people talk about football in a pub and that sort of stuff. I think it gave it a tiny little window of normality to it, where you could just hear some people kind of chatting some bollocks.
But what you're saying, from a revenue point of view, it wasn't that horseshoe that you'd have expected. I suppose because lots of other people have, at that time, go, hey, let's do a podcast. And I suppose you're in with everybody else, and like you say, the ads aren't able to sell stuff because people aren't buying stuff.
Yeah.
So it was more promotion that was the thing. So we've touched on a few different things we've talked about merch and subs, and I want to get onto all of that in a minute, but before I do, I need to talk to our listeners and viewers about the Leeds Business Podcast Fair Deal. The Leeds Business Podcast Fair Deal has two sides to it. My side of it is I bring you every week, free of charge, fantastic inspirational and motivational guests like Dan and Michael, totally for free. Your side of the deal is you have two parts to it. Part number one, recommend this podcast to one other person you feel will get benefit from it. And part number two, write us a review, either on the Apple Podcast app or at podchaser.com. That's the Leeds Business Podcast Fair Deal. Fair deal, guys?
Fair deal.
Fair deal to me.
Okay, fair deal. Oh, okay, so let's just talk about revenue streams, because I know there's a number of them. Talk me through them all.
Subscriptions.
And that's people subscribing to the magazine.
To the TSB Plus is kind of what we've worked it into. So that's you can have it with the magazine, or it is the ad-free podcast. Some extra benefits, like you get access to the live match ball, you get ad-free podcasts, you get an extra show, you get merch discounts. So there's kind of a daily email. So there's quite a few things built into it, but that's really, I always think of that, the subscribers, as like the foundation of the revenue, because
it's about a quarter or a third of the revenue, I think, overall.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a huge chunk of it, and it's the most consistent part as well, because for merch, we have to kind of get new products out, and there's additional work, I suppose, for a lot of the other stuff, whereas that is just very, very consistent, and we're lucky enough that we've never really had a particular dip in them. It goes up and down a little bit with the fortunes of the team. If you're on a big losing streak, people drop off a touch, but the general trend line is pretty steady, isn't it?
Yeah, and then there's the ad-supported revenue as well, which provides a big odd, probably about a fifth of it overall, I would say.
The Acast revenue.
Yeah, the Acast revenue, which is sponsorship and advertising that they sell. I mean, we don't have to lift a finger for that. They do that. There's other stuff that we sell separately as well. Local companies and deals we negotiate ourselves, and we are currently looking at new deals for like 2025 as well, that we will sell separately. So that's a growth area for us. Yeah, the merch is probably again about a fifth of the revenue, something like that. So yeah, so like the print side of it is just kind of, it's the legacy product, isn't it? But it's where the heritage lies from the Square Ball, like, because it started in 1989.
Okay, so we've got subscription, we've got merchandise, we've got advertising, we've got sponsorship, and we've got mag sales.
That's it.
Anything else?
I think that's it.
I think that's it.
I've done a couple of live shows as well, but
there's we get some revenue from YouTube, but truthfully, that really just covers its own cost, which might surprise people. Actually, there's a lot more money in the advertising from a podcast than YouTube in terms of just the CPMs.
Audio rates are like 7 or 8 times, for us, I think.
Yeah, so it's a big difference. But we needed to be on YouTube, we thought, so that we didn't essentially get overtaken in that space, because some people will only watch on YouTube, and if we're not on there and they're not buying, because it might be that someone watches on YouTube sometimes, but they also then subscribe, they also buy Christmas jumper when they go on sale. There's kind of it's a worthwhile space to be in, I think.
As we've done today, we wear the merch, don't we? And
exactly.
it sells stuff. So,
but that essentially just pays for the YouTube revenue at this stage anyway. Is just really paying for someone to edit the video that keeps it on there. So it's self-sustaining, and we're kind of comfortable with that, I think.
Yeah. So let's talk about the promotion season. That was really the thing that fired the business and made it a proper business. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah.
Completely.
And just off the back of that, how much does the team's performance affect the revenue of the business?
I don't know for sure. We've not tracked it exactly, but it's very self-evident that when Leeds win or perform well, things sell. It's the same reason. Like if you subscribe to any of the club's email channels and you're on their mailing list, as soon as Leeds win a game, an advert goes out for buy this, and it's true, isn't it? People do. There's a spike. The only way I think I measure it from a podcast point of view is consumption of the shows, which probably it wavers. There's a certain amount of like misery loves company as well, though. I think, and when things are bad, people will tune in just to have again that shared experience. But you maybe see like a 10% dip in audience, but it tends to recover over time anyway. People will leave it. I don't want anything to do with those idiots, not us idiots necessarily, but the football team. I don't want anything to do with it. But then you recover over a couple of days and you're right, I'll listen to that now. Yeah,
after a win, people all want to hear it. After a defeat, it takes a little bit of time. Sometimes people just go, okay, fine, I'll listen now.
Yeah.
But they're very consistent, the episodes, I would say. And I have been tracking subscriber numbers, because I know when we went down from the Premier League, there was a concern about, is this going to mean a big drop-off? And actually, there was no big drop-off when we went down. And then we're in the Championship and winning games, and the numbers start growing again, because people like interacting with the winning team.
Yeah, a wise man once said to me, actually, going down might be one of the best things that happens to your business. But otherwise, it's because you'll start winning games in the Championship, and hopefully they come back up, and you start to ride a positive wave instead, rather than winning 9 games a season.
So we're still in the sort of the tail of that, I think, aren't we, to a large extent?
But you're right, though. There is a cautionary tale there, which is why I think it keeps you focused, doesn't it? You can never get complacent and think that, this huge interest will always maintain, because we've seen it waver before at Leeds when apathy takes over. So I think it keeps you on your toes, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And there's, we could do the best show in the world, and if it's about a team no one cares about, it's still a problem for us. So I think that's the danger of being linked to a football club. But the ups and downs we've seen since we've been doing this full time have not adversely affected us at all. It's all been okay.
So we've talked about how you all came together and sort of the Bielsa era sort of exploding it. Talk to me about the growing pains from being a hobby / income to a proper grown-up business. What sort of things where have the pain points been?
A lot of it's boring stuff, isn't it? Like boring stuff and admin, stuff that needs doing, company's house things that need sending back. That I mean, I've been self-employed. You know, you do your tax returns, you have an accountant and stuff like that, but it takes it to a whole new level. I think that's one aspect of it. Somebody needs to do that or be brought in to do that. And it's about the point at who takes that on and the point at which you bring somebody else in to do that.
Yeah. We've had a few fairly major bumps as well, I suppose, in terms of, I mentioned the office we had at Calidus where Steve had given us an office for free. So we were in there for about a year completely free, which was, again, amazing because it gave us off the back of promotion and going into there, it just felt like we had breathing space and we were like, okay, we felt comfortable to spend money on like, no, we'll get the better cameras because then they'll last longer where we can kind of get the decent stuff.
Yeah.
But then Steve was selling they were selling that building around the same time as that. The merchandise company went into administration and they owed us quite a lot of money. So all of a sudden we went from thinking, oh, we're really comfortable here, to all of a sudden there's a massive hole there, and now we need to start paying for somewhere. So this is when we've moved into, it's the building we're in now, which we were upstairs, it weren't me initially, but you go from paying nothing to all of a sudden having to find like over £1,000 a month for something. You're like, oh, okay, well that's quite a hole. We'd got to try and fill that. And then I think we'd moved in the office. Then the merch thing happened like a month after or something.
Yeah, there's a lot of churning.
So all of a sudden in a very short period of time, you're thinking, oh, maybe we're not all right here because there's all of a sudden like bills to pay and money we thought was coming isn't coming. So I think that was one of the kind of major hitches we've had. And then I suppose the other biggest challenge has probably been over this summer when Daniel, who was a director and has been with us since we started this, he was on the first podcast we did. He was helping with the mag from very early on, certainly the first few issues. And he decided he wanted to just go and do his own thing, basically. So he's still writing about Leeds, but he wants to sort of do his own, I guess, the non-business side of it, so he can just be a writer.
It's very pertinent to this, I think, actually, yeah, because, the more a business grows, the more demands it places on you as a business.
Yeah.
And it stops you doing the core thing, I suppose, doesn't it? And he is, first and foremost, like a genius writer, and ended up doing stuff like looking after the website and, things that we couldn't necessarily afford or justify bringing in a whole new staff member to do that. Mm. So we end up, picking up bits. I think that's probably an area that we're still trying to navigate, is who picks up what, because it distracts away from the core product, which is either the writing or the podcast or whatever.
Yeah, but that's by far the biggest staff thing we've had to contend with, isn't it? Because it was like, all of a sudden he was like the main writer. He was like an intrinsic part of what we are, I think.
Yeah.
And then to have to deal with that departure, and it was kind of sudden the way it happened as well. I'd probably seen it coming to an extent, but I maybe expected there to be like a bit more of a lag on it, I suppose, and it would happen gradually. But it was all of a sudden like, no, I'm out, and it was like
grenade done.
It was kind of like all done, and it was like, oh right, okay. I suppose you need to work out all the stuff he did then. It's kind of trying to unpick like just daft little things as well, like the fact that various accounts on websites were linked to emails and stuff, and it's just trying to unpick all that sort of stuff as well.
Well, the website went down, didn't it? Because I didn't quite know how to access the back end of our hosting. Mm. And I think a credit card had expired, like one of the business credit cards had expired. We had new cards issued. So I need to go in there and change it. Mm. But I wasn't sort of aware of that problem until the website went down. Why is the website falling over? Oh, it's because the bill's not being paid for the hosting. It's like, oh, shit. We need to do it. So just little things like that. But we've navigated like the vast majority of that. But I mean, alongside that, we lost Phil Hay as well. So for anybody who's not aware who Phil Hay is, he was the Leeds United writer for the Yorkshire Evening Post for many years in Leeds, went off to be at the Athletic, and then changed jobs within the Athletic. So that would be this last summer. Was that right?
It was just before the end of last season, wasn't it, that he kind of quit on the Leeds stuff.
So Phil was on our podcast twice a week, and again was an instrumental part of the growth, because we'd partnered up with the Athletic, again, which was a really important part of the growth and is a separate side story, because that added a lot of gravitas to what we did. We originally did a show subcontracting for them, which was great because they were paying us pretty handsomely to do that, and it meant that we minimised staff costs. So we were able to kind of transfer a lot of the cost of me out to the Athletic, which was great for us as a business, because it meant we could invest in other staff and you other guys could quit jobs and so on. So we had that with the Athletic. Then they decided to bring that to an end because they got sold to the New York Times. They rationalised their business. And they said to us, you can have the podcast. So we brought it in-house. And then therefore we took the ad revenue, which was, again, huge for us, like a massive, massive numbers that show was doing. And then Phil changed jobs, which meant that came to an end. So we lost this kind of really instrumental twice a week part of our output alongside Moscow Daniel going. So we had those two things this summer to go, this is a fairly big summer of churn. What do we do? How do we navigate that? So that's been a massive challenge. It falls into the bracket of there's always effing something is one of the phrases we bandied around quite a lot, isn't it? Just laughing at life.
So how did you deal with that? Because you've got a big effect on the product, and from a business point of view, you've lost a founder director. So from a product point of view, did you have a big sort of strategy meeting? You go, right, okay, where do we go forward, or was it just we'll carry on and see what happens? And again, from a business point of view, we'll get into it on the. So I'm asking you two questions here. I know I should do that. Second question: how do you cope with business-wise? How do you cope with the director leaving? Did he sell his shares back? Did you buy them off him? We'll take the first question first, and the second question.
Well, the business side of it's relatively easy to say because he made it very easy, and we negotiated an exit quickly and painlessly, and all credit to him for that. So that's still in the works, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's essentially we're buying the shares back,
right? Okay.
And thankfully we've got enough money within the business to just kind of absorb them back in, and it's not there's not any major issue on that, is there? Which is
not at all. Yeah, no, I say a huge credit to him. And there's been no falling out about any of it, as it was just I just want to go off and do my own thing, and fair enough, we understand why.
Yeah.
So that's that. Yeah, the product side of it was probably of greater concern to me because we lost a hell of a lot of our output, not only in Phil but then in Moscow as well as in Daniel. I'd reached a conclusion when Phil left that there's no way to replace Phil because he's been on the scene for 15, 20 years covering Leeds, so much authority. So there's no point in putting in one person to replace him. So I kind of conceived this idea that, well, what we need to do is we need to make it feel bigger. So if we're losing Phil, who's big in himself, we make it feel bigger by having loads of other people on, having loads of other guests, loads of new voices. So it would always be me and Michael plus another person in the chair that you're sat in, Phil. And that was a plan I was kind of swinging into action anyway. And we've launched a new show this season called The West Stand, which is ostensibly people who would sit in the West Stand. That's the main stand where the press, the directors, all those kind of people sit at Ellen Road. And it's a rotating cast of guests, which is great. It's allowed us to speak to new people. It's allowed us to refresh opinions, hasn't it? Rather than going over the same ground over and over and over. So I was pleased with that seems to have taken off as an idea, and it's reflected in the figures that we've got back. So they're just starting to sort of crystallize now, and I can say, actually, that was probably the right thing to do. And also, with Daniel Moscow leaving, we've been able to reinvest money in staff as well, and we've got a second office in this building now, which has given us a proper space to work from, hasn't it? So we're able to just kind of lean into all that and develop ideas better. I think we erred on the side of caution with the size of the room that we leased here, just because we didn't want to burn all the cash. We weren't quite sure, were we? But we now feel a certain degree of comfort that we've been able to reinvest that money and just spend time with the staff. And we've got Rob, who was writing, has now been promoted into being the editor, doing Moscow's old job.
It has been on the podcast for a long time as well. Rob and Moscow had kind of gone to rotating cast on the podcast. They'd kind of done one then the other. So
Rob had been there anyway as a cast member, and then we've brought in Chris McMenemy, who was working in a different industry, but was doing some football writing in his spare time, wasn't he? Some side projects, big Leeds fan. So we brought him in as well. And there's Dean, who is an actor by trade. He was in Waterloo Road, and he came in to take a lot of the editing duties off me. So I've been able to breathe a little bit more and not do all the editing stuff and look at some of the business stuff and be a bit more strategic about it. Just give me some breathing space, really. So he took a lot of that off me, which was great. And he's become a cast member as well. So all of a sudden we've gone from it just sort of being a core three of us with Rob. Rob was then rotating with Moscow. Yeah. We've suddenly got this really big cast with me and him sat at the heart of it, kind of.
I mean, I would say since we did this, as we turned this full time, the two of us have been on, must be 99% of the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I tied it up. In 2023, we put out, I think it was 298 shows. I was on all but 2 of them. And I think I edited 250 of them, which is a lot.
Yeah.
It was too many. It was too much.
And I've been, I know I've had holidays in the middle, but often as well. I've called in from, haven't I? Like
taking a microphone,
taking a microphone on a laptop.
So actually, something that two major things that you thought this is really shitty have actually developed the business and developed the product.
Yeah, strangely, yeah.
And I think it's made us in some ways a more logical business as well, because essentially they'll think about if you can't not be there, you've got a job, not a business. It's we did not have much scope for a day off, really, did we?
No,
to a large extent. Whereas it does feel like we're kind of getting towards that space now where we can trust other people to do it, and as well, because the audience are now used to more voices on there, they won't instantly go, well, who's this?
It's a classic business lesson, isn't it? Letting go of stuff, giving up control of stuff. And
delegation and letting go. Oh dear, business owners don't like doing that.
Yeah, but it's actually proved, because kind of run ourselves to the point of doing too much, and letting go has actually been it's been a relief. I think it's been quite therapeutic, and just going. I think speaking of therapeutic, when I referred myself for therapy, we addressed some perfectionism issues that I've got around work, and actually part of the stuff that I learned was, do you know what? They can't all be 10 out of 10s. It's fine as long as they're 7 out of 10s most of the time. The occasional 6 will happen, maybe a 5. You'll also do some 10s, but it's just being consistent, and it doesn't have to be brilliant all the time. It's fine for stuff to not be. You can't put out as much stuff as we do and it all be brilliant. But I think I kind of wanted it always to all be brilliant. And actually, part of letting go is just saying it's fine if if that little is not taken out of a podcast, because I'll go through it and take out the and the r's and little things like that, mouth clicks, things like that. If they make it through, it's fine. It's okay. But it took me a long while to be able to do that.
But that's classic business owner. I can't delegate it because nobody can do it as well as I do. And I used to have this with my team. I'd say, look, we're at A and we need to get to B. I'd go this way, but if you go that way and we still end up at B,
exactly,
it doesn't matter. So it's the quality thing. Nobody's going to do it as well as I can, and nobody's going to do it the same way as I can. And neither of those are actually true.
Oh, no, completely. But like the ability to go see my children and, have a day out or something like that, and just know that I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Or even just go sit in a steam room at the gym and just think for 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Or swimming or something. Just being able to have a bit of time back has allowed me actually. And I always find that when I'm swimming is the time I come up with ideas. For whatever reason, I find it really quite meditative, swimming.
I do the same. I do exactly the same.
Up and down, up and down. You don't have to think about anything. You just go from there to there to there to there, 45 minutes or whatever it might be. And my brain goes off elsewhere thinking about, well, we could do this. We could try that. I don't know why it happens to be the pool. It just does.
Yeah.
I
want to touch on business strategy because you've mentioned it a couple of times, and this is sort of a grown-up business thing. But before we do, each week on the show we have a business surgery where somebody writes in and asks us, me, and the guest to solve their problem. And this week, and I won't name the person who's mailed it in, quite relevantly has said, I'm thinking of launching a podcast. What are the things I should look out for? I'm a podcast host. I'm not doing it as long as you can. So I'll do my answer, then you can give your answer. From my point of view, I think there's a number of key things. I think the first thing is, why are you doing it? Because if you aren't consistent on why you're doing it, when the shit hits the fan, which it will, and you'll get bored and it's harder work than you think, if you haven't got that, you'll give up. Number 2 is, who's the audience? And that has to be relevant to your content and how, not only the content, but how you deliver it. I think also the format and the cadence. So the Square Ball guys don't do it as regularly as as it's not exactly on the same day every day. This podcast comes out every week, and I think your audience has to know when it's going to come out and expect it. And then when it doesn't, and I'm sure you guys have had this, the people go, hang on, where's the podcast? It should be out by now. I think they're some of the key points that I've experienced. Guys, what would you say to somebody who's thinking of launching a podcast?
It's interesting because the 2 things I've written down were why and who's it for. So yeah, I would agree with that. You need to remember, I think, that this is for somebody. I think there's often a misconception with podcasting that people think it's just a case of sitting down with somebody probably you like, maybe who's either in the business, in the case of a business podcast, or even if it's just like an entertainment or comedy thing, and you just talk and that's it. And there's so much more to it than that. So much more. The best shows sound like they are delivered like that, but they will be planned and prepped up to the eyeballs so they can sound natural. So that you need to be really aware of that and put your audience first. And it's so hard to do. And I was chatting actually to some lads on another podcast. I'm just advising on just some audience growth techniques and audience retention stuff I learned when I was in radio. And saying that it's so easy to not address your new listeners. So the key to growing a podcast, I said to them, is think of your listeners in three categories: gold, silver, and bronze. So the gold ones are your super fans, the ones who will subscribe to your Patreon, will pony up, they know who you are, they care about you, they're really invested in it, they'll buy your merch. You got the silver ones, which is probably the bulk of your audience, who catch most of what you do, quite like you, don't mind if they miss a few, will dip in and out sometimes. And then there's your bronze ones, who are the new ones, or the ones sampling it for the first time, or will listen very, very occasionally. And the boundaries between them are blurred, but for the purposes of the example, it's a nice, easy way to distill them. And what you want to do is you want to funnel as many people into your bronze category, and then they will turn them into silvers and turn your silvers into golds, hopefully. And that's how you're going to grow. So many podcasts only speak to the gold and silver listeners. And the reason for that, it's a completely natural reason, and we do it as well. So I'm constantly reminding ourselves, you do it because you're familiar with the format, you know it. So you go into it with a certain amount of assumed knowledge. Like, I speak to Michael just about every day. I know I can tee him up with certain jokes, but you can't make your jokes exclusive to new listeners. They have to be explained and understood. What are the references that you're making? That the gold listeners will go, I get that. That's an in-joke that I understand. But if you go into a pub and two people are talking in front of you and they make a little in-joke between themselves, you feel left out. So you have to remember that. It's always, everything should be pitched at new listeners all the time. And you will slip into it all the time as well, where you don't. But if you can remind yourselves on an ongoing basis, this is for new people, that's how you're going to grow. So always concentrate on the new people and the people who are going to feel excluded if you don't explain what you're talking about. So your format needs to be clear. Your characters need to be clear within your show, in my opinion, and the stuff that I was kind of coached. And it's translated into us doing pretty well out of it. So, I mean, I'm absolutely not the authority on this, but that's what I was told, the concepts that were kind of coached into me, and it makes sense to me. And it's something I try and do. Yeah.
The prep side of it's interesting, because I think a lot of people hopefully hear it. But it's not scripted at all, but we do have a lot of bullet points, and we have things we're going to talk about. And if it's the case of like the propaganda show that we do, which is clips, like that's all laid out in an order on a sheet, so we know what's coming.
Yeah, it's Gogglebox for football podcasts, isn't it?
Essentially, yeah. So, but that there's a lot of work goes into that. The clips are edited. They're not just taken directly from a YouTube clip. I'll take bits out of them to make them more compact. I'll try and make things as punchy as possible in the build up to it. And it's all prep that maybe you don't, hopefully listening to the show, you actually don't realize it's happened. But the way that it's compacted down to make it as concise as possible, so it becomes a faster moving show and stuff like that. So try and
energy, pacing,
and but that all comes from the prep, because there's a way you could do that show differently, but it'd involve listening to like a 5-minute clip, and maybe your attention drifts off a little bit halfway through it, but trying to keep it as punchy as we can.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, it's not just turning on the mics and start talking.
Yeah, basically.
It is. You can do that, and you can enjoy a certain amount of success with that. But I mean, everybody will be familiar with the phrase, probably, like the attention economy, and it's something we've spoken about often. People, listeners and viewers, they're fundamentally quite selfish, and everybody knows this, because it's the way that you will, even as a podcast host, you will consume stuff on YouTube or Spotify, something like that. You hear a song that the algorithm serves up, you don't like it, you swipe next, and people will treat your show in the same way. If you don't deliver what they want to hear, they're out of there. So you're constantly fighting against, and it's other distractions. The attention economy. It's not just, you're not just fighting against other podcasts in the same space. You're fighting against the kids in the back of the car. You're fighting against YouTube, the TV, whatever it might be. If you're on a dog walk, your dogs run off. Everything is fighting for your attention. So you need to constantly remind yourself that people will drift out at the first opportunity. So you need to just trim all the fat. So you can sit down and just talk, but you will lose people. And you need to know when to get in and out of a point. But they're skills that just take time, I think.
I think for a new podcast as well, it's thinking about where it's going to be in 6 months. We're fortunate, really, that we do a Leeds podcast. So it's a constant changing thing. There are games every week. There are transfers. There's just always something happening. A lot of podcasts are built around a concept, and then they maybe lend themselves more to, is it like, are you going to aim to do a series here? Is this going to be a 10-part podcast, which then ends, and you do another 10 parts 3 months later? Or is it something you're going to try and do every week? Because if you're going to do something every week, you need something new to talk about every week, because it'll get dry pretty quickly if you just like, well, this is a concept that I came up with a few weeks ago.
Yeah, because football never stops, does it? It's 10 months of the year, and there's always a game.
Exactly.
So, and transfers and stuff happen around that, and just drama and news and injuries and stuff. But if it's a business setting, what are you going to talk about? So I'm going to do a podcast about my business. Well, what are you going to talk about? Is it going to be the same in 4 or 5 weeks? Yeah,
you've probably got an idea for what your first few episodes will be, but what then? I suppose is what are the
and
first
also
episodes?
Record some episodes and don't put them out.
See what they sound like.
Yeah, because it takes ages to find your proper voice. And I mean, again, authenticity is just, it's everything. In a world that kind of engages in rage bait and clickbait and sensationalism, you just need to be authentic. The world is crying out for authenticity, I think, at the minute. And I think it's one of the things we try and lean into. I mean, 95% of what we are on the show is us. There's a bit of embellishment. There's 5% of kind of, I don't know, developing characters and playing up to sort of stereotypes about our characters. But that actually makes it easy for people to relate to us because, apologies for this, but he's the bald one. He's the funny one. He's the one who's tight with his money. It's easy to characterize him, I would say it's like when you're going to stag do and you will turn up at the start of a weekend and nobody knows each other. The journey you want to go on with your audience is going from that kind of awkwardness and learning who each other are and what are the characteristics that you have and you share, and how do you explain who you are to somebody else in that stag party and think, I don't want him to think like I'm a twat. Just little things like that. So it's kind of going on that journey. So by the end of the stag weekend, you've bonded with maybe somebody in there who loves you and thinks you're great and you'll keep in touch. Somebody else might think you're a dickhead, and it's fine. It's fine for people to not like you. But go on that journey from the start of the stag weekend to the end with your listeners. I think that's a really nice way to kind of think about it.
I think one other thing as well, and the vast majority of people cannot commercialize a podcast. Just give us an idea of the size of the listenership we're talking about that you're commercializing.
So we do about, at the minute, 550,000 listens per month audio.
And that's via the Acast platform. So that excludes paying subscribers because they get their feed on if you're using Patreon, it's a similar system, but it's within our own ecosystem. But it's a long URL that you add to your player. Yeah. So, and it doesn't include YouTube either, which is...
It's about 300,000 or 400,000 streams per month. But again, I don't know exactly how a stream's counted. And your watch times on YouTube are far lower than you get from audio engagement. So it's a slightly different beast. But yeah, you're probably talking about reaching about 750,000, 800,000 people every...
Wow. Well, listens.
Listens or streams.
Not individuals.
Might be individuals, yeah. But, so it's a lot.
Okay, so I hope that answers the question on our business surgery. It is a long haul, as you guys have said.
Yeah.
Let's just sort of wrap things up with, you've gone from a hobby that's become a business. How do you determine the business strategy going forward? Has somebody specifically got that role, or do you do it together? I mean, how much of it now is proper grown-up business and strategized and planned and all that sort of stuff?
More than it was, I will say. We have sort of quarterly board meetings now. I'm trying to schedule them in as more frequently. It's helped having the second office upstairs because we can just strategize on stuff like sensible day-to-day stuff more. So yeah, we're getting there, I think is probably the fairest answer to that.
Yeah, and trying to come away from doing some stuff maybe just because we've always done it and always done it that way. Like, for example, with the summer specials we've done, we mentioned the one after promotion, which was an enormous success, like generated a lot of money for us, meant we had money in the business to do other things with. The last couple of years we've done them and we basically broke even, haven't they? And there's a huge amount of work in it.
The labour cost is huge.
There's people are spending months working on this. We're spending days posting them all out and essentially for kind of nothing. So it's like we had a chat recently saying, well, let's only do a special if something special has happened. So like if there's a promotion, we talked about next year, it's the anniversary of the European Cup final.
Yeah.
Something around that maybe, but make it like an event for someone. So they go, oh, this is something that is worth owning. I'll want to keep it. But we just got in the habit of doing summer specials, I suppose. So things like that, just being a bit more logical on them and thinking, well, why are we doing this?
Yeah, and we sold we've done our own football shirts with Admiral, and because we sold a couple really, really well, let's just do more. But actually, there was no real thought or examination of, well, why are we doing this, and why would people want to buy this one again? You know, do they want to spend money on a football shirt? We just not even properly working out why we were doing it.
Yeah.
Other than it had just worked before, so you end up sat on a lot of stock for stuff that hasn't necessarily sold. So we think, well, let's just take a step back and see if we can turn that into an event or give it a reason. Like we did some Marcelo Bielsa tribute shirts, the red and black Newell's Old Boys design, which sold like hotcakes. We've also done a design like the tile pattern on the motorway underpass on Lowfields Road, close to Ellen Road, which loads of people who are Leeds fans will completely relate to. They really sold well, but just some of the sort of bog standard reinventions haven't sold as well. So like, why are we doing it? Who does it speak to? You know, well, it's the why, and you know, why are we doing this? Who's it for?
It's like a huge amount of what we do, truthfully, is based on instinct as well. It's worth saying, like in terms of the shows and things, we just sort of think half the time we end up doing something in a way because we just think, oh, we think that'd be funny, or we think that'd be interesting. And it's certainly with the podcast side of it, it's kind of hard to get away from that as a business model, really, because it's what has brought us to this point. And
so we are the product and all that. Yeah,
kind of
bit,
yeah. So like you can't you could do customer surveys and say which bits do you like, but then if you give people just the bits they like, it might be too much for them. So it's kind of it's almost feeling your way to what you think is a good balance on stuff.
Actually, that's just made me think. Talking about authenticity, I think that's actually probably a really good example of it, because you tend to find that like your audience reflects the people that are on your show, and like your audience will reflect the host. If you're like on the radio, for example, your audience ends up being the same sort of age thereabouts as your host. So which is why they move presenters on after a while they get too old for that particular brand. And it's the same with podcasts. You tend to find people will relate to it. So if you sort of stick to your guns and trust your instincts, you know that you're going to get people, hopefully enough people, who are like you and will relate to it, that they'll stick around and do it. So I'm not as scared of that as an idea, because I think it sort of speaks to authenticity. Like, if you like doing it and you're having a good time, then your audience will have a good time, and that's really authentic.
But also, I think now, you know, you're almost like doing it live. You're now starting to think about the business rather than just doing.
Yeah,
and I think that's part of growing up as a business as well, isn't it? Well,
that was the big thing this summer, talking about the churn we lose in Moscow and Phil. It's like, actually, we've had nothing but an upward curve in audience now, but we're losing two really big parts of what we are. How do we stop that plummeting down the other side? And thankfully, what we've done seems to have worked. Like the numbers are very, very even.
Yeah, I think this summer has felt big, I have to say, just in terms of like a step back from it. And I guess it's been a bit of a summer of growing up. Yeah,
it's great. It's what small businesses do. It's part of the growing pains, that it's not all upward, and then sometimes the shit hits the fan. You go, right, okay. Actually, it's an opportunity to step back and think, and horrible word, but strategize and go forward from that. One final question for you: the upside of monetizing a hobby is the downside, or how much of a downside is actually your hobby becomes your job and your money and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I just going back to my money woes, it had to happen. The other side of this is I can't think of anything else I'd rather be doing. Like honestly, the number of times we've sat in here and just gone, so funny that this is our job. Like we laugh about it constantly, because it's a marvel to us that this is, I mean, like when we were kids, this wasn't a thing. Yeah. And it became a thing. And I love it. I love it so deeply. Yeah.
Yeah. If someone had described my job to like the 12-year-old me, it would have blown my mind, because we're like, well, it's just Leeds. I just have
somebody's going to pay me just to talk about Leeds United every single day.
Exactly. It's the sort of thing the teacher said, you can't just do that as a job, you know. It's like, well, maybe you can in the end. I think the thing I suppose I do miss out on to a degree, like over the years I've gone to a lot of away games and stuff, because we are now doing live podcasts after the games and we're coming here and watch them on TV. I suppose I miss that, but that's something again that I feel like now we're getting more people on board. I could maybe start going to some away games again. My kids are now just hit secondary school, so I don't feel like they're a lot more independent at home now. So I feel like I'd maybe have a bit more scope to go, look, I am going to Sunderland at 8 a.m. I will be back at 10 p.m.
Yeah, or you do it live from the away end. Can't see any problem with doing that.
It's a risky business. But I suppose I've missed that a little bit. And for the home games, I'm nearly always moving mags around and stuff to kind of sell at the low fields and things. So it's a bit of a bind sometimes. But as a whole, like I've not a single bit of scope to complain.
No, not at all. It is. I mean,
blessed.
I was going to say, to borrow a Leeds United phrase, it is living the dream, isn't it?
Yeah,
it genuinely is.
So.
It's the best job in the world for me. Like I thought I'd peaked by doing radio. Like it was my ambition to do something there. And actually, the radio informs so much of what I understand about podcasting now. And I realised like this feels like the peak of the mountain to me. I absolutely love it. This is like the show that we do most of the time. It's like the breakfast show I never got to do because I did drive time and never went. The next step after that is breakfast. Never quite got to do one. And this feels like the show that I never got to do because it's so funny. And like Michael has just evolved into not just a colleague, but like one of my best mates. And he's so funny and genuinely just wants to make his corner of the world a better place and a funnier place. And I enjoy working with him so much. It is genuinely just a pleasure. It's so inspiring as well. And like the charity stuff you've done. I know you don't like to talk about it. But yeah, no, it's brilliant. It's brilliant fun. I can't wish to do anything else. It's the best thing ever.
Okay. One last point. I want to ask all our guests to give a shout out to another Leeds business. Can you guess who it is? I can guess, but our listeners maybe aren't in on the joke. So go on.
But it goes to show everyone who listens to the show will know Levi Solicitors.
Yeah.
Will's Probate Conveyancing.
Yeah.
And 10% off at the Square Ball.
I don't think you have to do the actual read.
No, we don't do it. Yeah, they've been with us from a mag advertiser probably over a decade ago to being
first pod sponsor. Still there, and still just allow us to do what we want with the read. But I think they really benefit from it as well. They've said like it does incredibly well for us. It's something that people shout at me in the street. Like I'm sometimes not even at Leeds games. I've had people shouting at me like out in town before. People have shouted Will's Probate and Conveyancing at me because it was a daft little thing I named the Big Three for some reason years ago. But it became a kind of a. It's like a meme. It's a meme.
Yeah. But it's got into the head of a generation of Leeds fans.
Yeah, and they've benefited from it hugely. But so have we, because like their sponsorship has been instrumental in our growth as well.
Yeah. Again, it's felt like that. I suppose to go back to the very early days of it, when you get subscribers in and you go, okay, well that's a salary. You sell some merch, you go, oh that's a salary. You get a sponsorship for the podcast from someone like Levi's, you go, oh well that's a salary. And I guess that was one of the early building blocks of us going, okay, well that's a good chunk of money.
Yeah, and you're right though, that like the creative freedom to basically mangle like solicitoring, I think that's what they call it, being a lawyer. It's a fairly dry occupation, isn't it? Mm. It's not noted for being a bit of a dick around, which is what this is, and yet they've just let us dick around with their brand, and like create stuff like the Big Three. Yeah, it's just like the huge uptake. So credit to them for letting us do it in our voice. And I would say that's one piece of advice if I could convey it to anybody who is selling sponsorships to brands or whatever. Let them do it in their voice because they know how to do it best and they know how to connect with their audience. And ours is silly and irreverent, and it just borders on stupid a lot of the time. And we're the biggest idiots.
I think you have just called our audience stupid there, which I don't think is entirely what you meant.
We are stupid, aren't we? We are silly.
Yes, that is true.
And I think people relate to us just being daft, and having a laugh at the stupidity and madness of football, because that's essentially what the show's about. It's about the experience of being a Leeds fan and just laughing at it all. And Levi's allow us to kind of fold them into that joke. Yeah, they've been ideal partners, haven't they? They send stuff over, but they go, now you do it. Here's the script, and I'll turn it into something.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay, so there'll be a link to Levi's in the show notes, and I'll even put your link in as well. So you
10%, get 10% off.
You get 10% off with the Leeds Business Podcast. How about that? Guys, it has been absolutely brilliant. Thank you very, very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks for listening to this episode. I hope you found it interesting, inspiring, and of use. To make sure you don't miss out on any future episodes, please subscribe to the show. Go on, do it now. Do it now before you go off and do something else. Thank you, much appreciated. Oh, and don't forget our fair deal. See you next week.